Welcome to QX Church. I'm Pastor Scott Conway. You find us online at qxchurch.org. And today we're talking about the book of James, chapter 1, verse 2, Count it all joy. Now today's one of those lessons that just kind of showed up on my heart in the last couple of days. I actually had a different lesson already prepped and scheduled for today. But something that I learned a long time ago is if you feel a burden on your heart to teach on something other than your plan, go with the Holy Spirit's plan. And so that's just kind of the way I've always run my ministry work. So therefore, we're doing that today. And then as I was particularly praying of, well, what should I be teaching on if I'm not going to teach on what I had planned and what I had scheduled and what I had already outlined. And the idea that settled into my heart was count it all joy when you encounter various trials. So James chapter 1 verse 2, something that used to be almost a go-to topic whenever I would preach at another church or teach at another church. This is what I would teach on. And so if I was visiting someplace and someone knew that I was a pastor, or at one particular church I was called Dr. Conway. The only place that called me Dr. Conway. And he asked if I would guest teach. And I said, okay, sure. Do you have a topic? And he says, anything you feel the Holy Spirit leads you to preach on. And so that was this verse. And that happened a few times. And yet it's been 8 years since I've taught on this topic. And my understanding as I've dived into this verse, this passage, has expanded and deepened in those years. So James chapter 1 verse 2, King James Version says, "My brethren, count it all joy when ye fall into divers temptations." New American Standard says, "Consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials." So count it, consider, joy in both cases. Divers temptations or various trials. Well, let's take a look at what some of the original language there means. So the count or consider, hagiomai, to lead, to go before, to be a leader, to consider, deem, account, or think. Joy, chara, joy, gladness, the joy received from you, the cause or occasion of joy. Temptation or trials, perasmos, an experiment, attempt, a trial, a proving, the trial of a man's fidelity, integrity, virtue, and constancy. Temptation, enticement to sin, trial, adversity, affliction, trouble. Now we could spend the entire sermon time just exploring all the possible meanings of this one verse and diving deep into how we might apply each one. So if we look at, consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials. So to lead, to go before, to be a leader, to consider, deem, account, think. So consider it all joy, to lead to joy, to go before to joy, to be a leader to joy, to consider, to deem joy, to account as joy, or to think joy. All the different approaches of what this hagiomai means. And the nuances that gives us from the Greek that don't always show up in the English. And joy, chara, joy, gladness, the joy received from you, a cause and occasion for joy. That consider it all joy, consider it glad, be glad, lead to gladness, to go before to that glad place. Temptations and trials. The most interesting thing about temptations and trials, perismos, is an experiment. When you encounter various kinds of experiments. When you think about that, you go, okay, so the trials, the temptations, the opportunity to be proven as something is an experiment. So count it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter different kinds of experiments in life. That there's some things you're going to try out, and maybe they'll work and maybe they won't. You have an idea, You have a hypothesis. You have this theory about how all this is going to play out, and maybe it will, maybe it won't, but it's worth a try. Now, for me in particular, when I set a new goal, like when I'm doing my sprint checklists, my first few days of it, it's an experiment. It's my trial days. And what I'm doing is I'm saying, okay, this is what I think I'm going to do, and then I give it a try. I check it on day one. If day one works, then I go, okay, I'll try it for day 2 and day 3. But I give myself a few days, and then I double check in at the end of the week to kind of see if it's working for me. Do I need to take stuff out of it? Because honestly, sometimes in a fit of inspiration, you get inspired to take a crack at things that might be a little bit beyond you. That the aspiration was beautiful. When you get to the execution, you realize that your body is not quite up to that. And in particular, as my friend and I were doing some working out yesterday, just to remember that I don't have the same conditioning that I had when I was working out 15 hours a week teaching every single class by myself. And so if I try to step in and I haven't done anything for a few years, in some cases, I had one woman came to class and said, I used to be able to do this. Like, and when was the last time you exercised? Well, just before my 8-year-old was born, so I guess I haven't worked out for almost 10 years. It's like, well, then there you go. It's not because you're old, it's because you haven't done anything for a while. And so she had to scale back what she was doing and work her way back forward. And my friend and I, we have to scale back what we're doing and not be quite as ambitious and work our way back up to the level of conditioning we had before we took a break, whether it was a break enforced by illness or injury or just, life. And it's an experiment. So count it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter different kinds of experiments in life. It's an experiment. You're learning something. You're trying something out. You're seeing what the outcome is. You're finding out what you can do. You're finding out what outcome you can produce. And maybe you can do what you thought you could do. Maybe you can't do what you thought you could do. Maybe you can do above and beyond anything you would have ever imagined. Count it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter different kinds of attempts. That sometimes you're just going to try. You don't know if you can make it. But you're going to push as far as you can and find out. Various types of trials, various types of proving. We're going to come back to proving, because that becomes relevant in one of the later verses. The trial of a man's fidelity, integrity, virtue, constancy. Where you find out your own faithfulness. You find out your own integrity, your own virtue, your own constancy. Now, when it comes down to this fidelity, how loyal can you be? Now, a lot of times when we think about fidelity, in particular when we're talking about marital relationships, the only thing people ever think about is like, well, did you do something with somebody else? To me, that is one of the least levels of fidelity. Because if you do something with somebody else in any other relationship, that's not being unfaithful to the relationship. If my friends do stuff with other friends, that's not being unfaithful to the friendship. Unless I have a contract that says otherwise, if my team members are also working for someone else when they're not working for me, they're not being unfaithful to me. When my instructors go to train at another martial arts school and learn another martial art, they're not being unfaithful to me and my art and my dojo. When they go to teach another style at another place, they're not being unfaithful to me and my style. And so when you look across all relationships, you see that particular fidelity that is commonly the first thing to spring to mind really is such a small thing because it only applies in that one relationship. In all relationships, fidelity applies to what do you show up with in this relationship. Now we'll still use the marital standards by way of example. If I have promised to love, honor, and cherish, I am being unfaithful when I am being unloving. I am being unfaithful when I'm being dishonoring. I'm being unfaithful when I'm not cherishing. and then with the whole lesson surrounding obey, and the mandate on the submitted. That part of the obligation of the submitted is, unless you're going to disobey when there's reason to disobey, and very often there are, people will tell you to do something you really shouldn't be doing. If there's a reason to belay, and that's to get others to not obey, and often there's reasons to have others not obey, or countermand, where you even put in a different order of your own over and above what someone in authority has said, because someone in authority has given a bad instruction and something different has to happen. And so on down the line, all the way up to removing the leader from leadership. That is the obligation of the submitted. That is part of the job. And so in obedience, if you owe obedience, you owe submission, that you should either just do what you're supposed to do or deal with the leadership based upon the leadership not leading well. And that's part of the obligation of the submitted. And if you're not doing that, you're being unfaithful. To hold whatever other parts of the relationship. And so when you begin to look at all relationships, are you holding up your end of the deal? What's your deal? And so if it's an employment relationship, are you doing your part? If you are not doing your part, you're being unfaithful to this relationship. So if you have a job and your job is to start at 9 and end at 5 and you're consistently not there at 9 o'clock, you're being unfaithful to that relationship, because the deal was you show up at 9, you open the doors, you unlock the place, and you're being paid from the time you get there at 9. And the customers know the sign says 9. They should be able to walk in and open the door at 9 o'clock. And when our sign says we open at 9, that is something we are telling the public. We will open at 9. And if they show up and they say, can I believe what they say? Well, they said they would open at 9. It's 9:30. Where are they? Can we believe the other things they tell us if we can't even believe their own posted sign? And so on and so forth. And so all of this stuff all tied into the trial of a man's fidelity, the trial of your faithfulness to your word, your faithfulness to the deal, knowing that that applies in every relationship we have. And then here gets to be the interesting thing that we run into a lot of times. In any contract we make, in any area of life, if someone breaks the contract with you, are you obligated to do your side of that contract still? So if I enter into a deal with Joshua, and we sign a contract, and in the contract it says, I will do X, Y, and Z, and he will pay me $1,000. And I don't do X, Y, or Z. And then I said, well, where's my $1,000? I said, well, I was paying you for X, Y, and Z. So yeah, but well, you signed a contract, and you signed a contract, and you were supposed to do X, Y, and Z. It's like, well, yeah, but that doesn't mean that you don't have to do your part. Aren't you a man of integrity? You agreed to pay me $1,000. Does he have to pay me? No, I didn't uphold my end of the bargain. Now, what is it? Well, I did X and Y. I said, well, I wasn't paying you for X and Y. I was paying you for X, Y, and Z. I paid you to have a done job. I didn't pay you to decide how much of the job you were going to do. I'm paying you to get the job done. So you have to finish the job. If you want your $1,000, finish the job. And then, so, by way of example, we have a friend who's fixing a car. And let's suppose it's a pickup and drop-off, where you're supposed to pick up the car, take the car, do certain pieces of the job, and then deliver the car. Well, the car doesn't get delivered because a third of the job's not done. And the car's still taken apart. So, well, I got the thing taken apart. I got all the replacement parts kind of stuck in there. I just haven't put it back together yet. But I don't have time to finish, so that's okay. Just give me 2/3 of the money. I said, well, I can't drive a car that's taken apart. So that would be being unfaithful to the agreement. So when you have a test of a person's fidelity, it's, are you doing what is part of this deal? And if you are expecting someone else to be faithful to their side of the deal, are you doing your side of the deal? Because back to the whole employment example. If I'm showing up late and leaving early and I'm not getting my work done when I'm there, do you have to keep on paying me? Do you owe me for 8 hours when I worked for 6? Of course not. But then here's the flip side. Should I uphold my deal of 9 to 5 if you skip the last 3 paychecks? If you show up and we agreed to $12.50 an hour, and then you decide later on, say, well, $12.50 is a little steep actually. I decide I'm going to pay you $8 an hour. Do you keep the job? Or do you consider that, okay, this person's not upholding their end of the bargain? Say, well, I'm paying you most of what I agreed. It's more than half. Why aren't you happy? I want my employees to be happy. I just want them to be happy getting 2/3 of what I promised them. That's not the way any agreement works, and yet very often that's the way we run other relationships. That's the way we run some of our friendships, some of our families, some of our romances. So consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials. And consider it all joy, my brethren, when you encounter various tests of your fidelity, where you have an opportunity to show, yes, I show up keeping my end of the deal. And if I'm not sticking to my end of the deal, it's because the other side already broke the contract. And if they'll keep up 2/3 of their deal, I'll keep up 2/3 of my deal, maybe. Maybe I'll keep up my entire deal for a while just to give them a chance to come around. Especially if they keep promising they're going to come around. Yeah, I'm going to pay you, I'm going to catch up, I promise. We were just a little short on cash this time around. It's like, you might let that story slide a time or two, right? Maybe. But at some point you're going, okay, you need to pay what you need to pay. Or I'm not going to keep working for you. Because we have a deal. Got to keep up your end of the deal. And how much of your deal do you get, or you're obligated to keep up if the other side won't keep up their end of the deal? Consider pure joy, my brethren, when you encounter different kinds of tests of your integrity. So we have a whole involved series of lessons on integrity. Builds on our spirit, soul, body model. Integrity 101 is, do your words match your deeds? Now, in the whole spirit, soul, body model, in spirit is religion, principles, others, and soul is will, mind, emotions, and body is action, senses, body. What you say is just in that one actions category. What you do is also in that actions category. Integrity 101 is what you say and what you do in that one little box. Does that match up? That if you say you did it, did you do it? And if you say you're gonna do it, do you take your word as your obligation? And if that answer is yes, and even all the way down to the kid, look, we teach this to children. Children as young as 4 get this idea that if mom says, go brush your teeth, and you say, okay, what better happen? Those teeth better get brushed. You gave your word when you told your mother you would go brush your teeth. You are now obligated by your own word, by your word, not her command, your word, to do what you told her you would do. 4-year-olds get this. 4-year-olds. And the mom asks you, did you brush your teeth? And you say yes. You should only say yes if that answer is yes, you did just brush your teeth. Because if you say it with your words, you are declaring it to be true. Basic Integrity 101. When you get to higher levels of integrity, you have integration of all of it. Spirit, soul, body. Your religion matches your principles, matches the way you treat others. Your religion, principles, and others matches up with the kind of choices that you make. Your religion, principles, others, and the choices you make then govern what you think. You choose your thoughts. You choose what you learn. You choose what you seek to create by those choices you made in submission to your own religion, principles, others. You bring your emotion in line with your will and your mind by focusing on where you choose to focus, by interpreting the way you choose to interpret. And you're focusing based on that choice. You're interpreting based upon your religion, principles, and others. So you show up with the intent. You show up with the attitude. And then when you have emotional states going on, you seek out the language of emotions and how you are going to gather the information that emotion is pointing you toward and do something about it. And all of that is not just Integrity 101 actions, what you say and what you do. It's actions, emotions, mind, will, others, principles, religion, your relationship with God, all in integrity, all the way down through senses. What do you look at? Not just what do you see, what shows up. What do you go out of your way to see? What do you listen to? Not just what do you hear, what comes to you. What do you go out of your way to hear? What do you go out of your way to experience? So if you're experiencing this lesson, you went out of your way to experience this. You went out of your way to listen to this audio. You went out of your way to watch this video. You went out of your way to be here today. That's a choice in what will I look at? What will I listen to? What experience will I give myself? And that's a choice flowing down again from your relationship with God, religion, principles, others, the choices you make in will, mind, emotion, action, senses, and your physical body is physically here wherever your here is right now. And it's here because you put it here. And that's how we plug into the world. So count it pure joy, my brethren, when you encounter various trials, experiments, attempts, opportunities for proving. The trial of your fidelity, the trial of your integrity, the trial of your virtue, the trial of your constancy. Constancy, we don't use that word very often anymore, do we? But the trial of your virtue, where you have an opportunity to find out, are you who you say you are? Are you the goodness you wish to be and express? And, and one example that what was an expensive way to prove this is when I said I would handle something, I thought I could handle it for free, maybe up to $100. That's not what I said. I just said, I'll take care of it. Taking care of it cost $265 more than I was prepared to pay. But I realized, what did I say? I said the words, I will take care of it. I was very precise with my words. I will take care of it. I remembered the exact words I said. The exact words I said to me are a binding contract. And so I spent the extra money. The money I had been saving to fix my car, I spent on keeping my word. Because keeping my word was an expensive investment that was worth it to me more than fixing my car. My car was still driving. It needed work, but it was still drivable. But I wasn't going to not keep my word. Even though I didn't use the I promise word, I didn't make a guarantee, I just uttered a sentence. And I should have clarified. I should have clarified and included my assumptions in my sentence, but I didn't. So I had a test of my virtue. And I decided to go with what I said. Because I am investing my time, my money, my energy, in that case my money, in my virtue. And my constancy. Count it pure joy, my brethren, when you encounter different tests of your constancy. That is, how consistent can you be? So people know what to expect from you. So that you're not just all over the place, where your rules are this way today, your rules are that way tomorrow. When they just don't know. One of the biggest things that has people that walk on eggshells is when they don't know what to expect from you. They don't know what your rules are going to be. Hey, I do this today and you're understanding. I do it tomorrow, I'm in big trouble. I do that the next day, you really don't care. That your rules aren't your rules. You express them like they're your rules, but they're not really your rules. Or you keep breaking your own rules, and so I'm trying to follow your example while obeying your words, and your words keep changing, your examples all over the place. And so when you have a test of your constancy, that Are your rules your rules? Are the rules the rules? That's just the way it is. Are your principles your principles? And if you declare them as such, do they stay those principles? If I tell you my highest values are love, joy, and peace, are my highest values constantly love, joy, and peace? If I tell you my core operating principles are reality is more important than anything we believe, all principles must be consistently applied, and the Bible is the undisputed primary source material for Christianity, are those true all the time? So a test of your constancy. What does it take for you to be inconsistent? What does it take for you to violate your own principles, to declare new principles and then different principles? Now, if you consider in corporate America, we have this idea, it's called management by bestseller. And that usually is because middle management or upper management read this great book, they attended this great seminar and said, oh, we're going to implement this. And it's a different this every 6 to 12 months. And they're not compatible with each other. And if just ignore it and give it 3 or 4 months and they'll completely forget about it. Like, oh, I see we have our mission statement. So, it's just words on the wall. You can ignore it because it's, that's all it is words on a wall. It's just a nice sounding slogan. They want you to memorize it so you can parrot it back, but we don't actually govern the business by those words on the wall. I mean, those are constancy issues. The people don't know what the culture is. People don't know what the rules are. In relationship with us, people should know what the rules are. And there shouldn't change. It shouldn't be that, well, today if you bring me coffee, that's sweet. Tomorrow you bring me coffee. How could you not know that I'm not drinking coffee today? What's wrong with you? And you go, okay, don't bring coffee. And then like 3 days later, I've given up on my coffee thing. And said, well, where's my coffee? Say, I thought you weren't drinking. So, get me my coffee, darn it. And you go, well, I was in trouble last time I brought you coffee, and now I'm in trouble when I don't bring you coffee. I don't know when I'm in trouble with you. And you can't operate that way with someone. And all it takes is one intense time of someone being in trouble. They will assume that's the new rule. Because no one wants to get yelled at and screamed at and in trouble and threatened with being fired and all of that stuff. They will, if they want to keep that relationship, whether the relationship is a job or a friendship or a romance or whatever, they'll try to not break that rule again. But if the rules are all over the place and new ones just pop up out of nowhere, boy, is that hard. So you can see we could spend the entire sermon just exploring the possible meanings of this one verse. If we dive deeper into this, we could keep on going. Count it pure joy when you encounter various temptations, various enticements to sin, various enticements to miss the mark, various enticements to willfully refuse to take the shot, various enticements to not keep your word, various enticements to not do it quite right, various enticements to just do it not right, various enticements to do it openly rebellious. And, some of them you might think are legitimate. Like, the other side's not holding up their end of the deal. If they're not holding up their end of the deal, I don't think I'm obligated to my deal. Yeah, we signed a contract, and I had certain obligations under the contract, and they're not doing their part. John and I were talking about this, a group I was working with, where I did every single thing in this group I said I would do. Now, here's the advantage I had. I had 100% control of my outcomes because my part was all performance-based. I decide to do it, I do it, my part's done. Now, they had obligations, but their obligations were related to producing outcomes, and they weren't in total control of the outcomes because it had to do with sales and marketing. And you can work on your close rates, and you can work on your number of calls and your number of appointments, but you don't get to decide if someone buys. I did everything I said I would do. They didn't produce the outcomes they said they could produce, not even close. They didn't even get 25% of their stated outcomes. And that took apart the whole thing. But when you're talking about the relationship, when you're talking about an enticement to miss the mark, I give myself permission to not have to continue to be a part of the group when I'm doing everything I said I would do, and I'm doing a quarter of their job. We wrote a book together. I ended up completing the draft all by myself. We had some verbal meetings where they gave me some input. They sent me a few notes. And the idea was I would outline and structure the book, and I would write up the meat, because I could do that. And then they would flesh it out from their experience and their individual stories. And after 2 months, it came back to me and said, yeah, we're making it worse, not better, and I'm sorry, we messed it all up. Can you just finish the book? And so I went back to my original treatment, and I fleshed it out, and I finished the book on my own. So that was part of their job. They were supposed to do 2/3 of the work. I ended up doing all of the work. But that's the way it goes sometimes. And so they understood that, I don't feel obligated to have to keep on doing all of this if I'm the only one in here that's doing my job. And that's the way it began to unfold. And so then the mutual decision was made. It's like, okay, you're right, and the outcome's not working. We're trying to do all these different things, and it's not working. And we dissolved the group. As an enticement to get out. I had signed an agreement one time. I objected to this going in. But at this particular church I was attending, before the marriage class began, you had to sign on the dotted line that says, I will do the homework, I will be at the sessions throughout this entire course. I told them, look, I don't want to sign on that until we've been through the first 3 lessons, so I can at least see what it's about. And it was this whole thing about, well, if your marriage isn't that important to you, and blah, blah, blah. And we said, okay. My wife and I talked about it, and we decided it's a commitment of, I think it was 4 months. I said, okay, we'll commit to the 4 months or the 6 months or however long it was. Because we were relatively new members at this church, and we thought it'll be a good opportunity to find out what this church is about. So we agreed to sign. We were the only ones that kept to that agreement. The leaders didn't keep to that agreement. And rather than just bail, we went to the leadership and we sought to be released from the agreement. And the reason we did that is we told them, like, look, when we signed the agreement on that page was an agreement that according to what we signed off on, the two of us are making to each other. That we agree as between husband and wife, we will see this through. But now you're not even finishing the class. We have no class to attend. We have no video to watch and discussions to have. Now she and I are going to finish the book because she and I signed on the line that says we will do that. But if you pick up to finish the seminar, since you've skipped the last 2 months, we ask to be released from the part of the agreement that flows from you. Now, why do we do that? Because it is a test of our fidelity. It's a test of our integrity. And why did we still finish our part of the book? Because we had an enticement to not hold our agreement. Well, we couldn't hold our agreement with them, but we finished our agreement with each other. Now, here's the thing as between husband and wife. My wife knows her husband will keep his agreement with her. Her husband knows his wife will keep her agreement with him. Do you think that was powerful as between the two of us? Absolutely. We despised that book. We hated that program. In fact, if you want to know your basic theme, you could pick a problem in a marriage, and it's the man's fault. And you are going to be right all but one lesson. And the one time the man wasn't the bad guy, the thing the woman did wrong is not understanding how weak and clueless the man was. That was the one thing that was the woman's fault in the entire seminar. Was not understanding how clueless the man is. And not having more compassion on this poor, stupid, foolish man. And we go, well, at least something was her fault. And there were some vicious stories in there. On their wedding night, one of his buddies came over early. And he was up, and they stepped across the street to shoot some pool. And I said, what's it like being married? Well, he didn't want to wake his wife up because she was fast asleep. Well, she woke up before he got back. Saw that he wasn't in the room anymore, and they said that he abandoned me. And acting on one of the worst, think about all the things it could mean if you're a bride and you wake up and your husband's not in the bed next to you. She didn't assume that maybe he's out getting his breakfast in bed. Maybe he's outside smoking a cigarette. Maybe he's trying to find some coffee and donuts. No, she assumed that the worst possible thing, that he abandoned me. I'm an abandoned woman. He dumped me. And then she took action on that. Now, the lesson wasn't taught on, don't be so hyper-judgmental. The lesson wasn't taught on, don't give it the worst possible interpretation. No, the whole lesson was, and you see how insensitive that husband was? And my wife and I are going, are they missing that whole big judgment thing? How judgmental she was? Not just that she had these emotions, but she not only passed judgment on him, she took action on that judgment. And then she walks 10 miles back to her family home, and she declares her judgment as though it is reality to her parents. She passes judgment on him, takes action on the judgment, declares her judgment as reality to other people whose opinion is going to impact his life. But no, that wasn't the lesson. The lesson was how enormously wrong he was for letting her sleep and going across the street to shoot around the pool with his friend. That was the lesson. So, we didn't like the program. But we finished it anyway for the sole reason that we signed that agreement. So, count it pure joy when you encounter diverse temptations, trials, experiments, attempts, trials, provings, the trial of your fidelity, integrity, virtue, constancy, and enticement to sin. When you encounter adversity, affliction, trouble. Now that's the only verse we're going to dive into at that level. It's because I want you to see how you do that with the Greek. This is part of why when you do an independent Bible study, I have a couple of different things I'll do sometimes. Sometimes I spend my time, I just start at Genesis, go all the way through Revelation. I'm doing that in the Geneva Bible right now. I admit it is hard reading. All of the S's looking like F's is a problem. Keeps slowing me down. Moses is Mophis, and that kept tripping me up. And there's certain words where if you put an F in there instead of an S, it's not a good word. And that's been a challenge for me. So a lot of times I just start in Genesis, go straight through to Revelation. And that's how I've read the Bible more than 53 times. Some Bibles take me 1.5 years, 2 years to get all the way through. Sometimes I can be done in a matter of months, depending upon whether I'm doing a quick reading or I'm doing a more studied reading. But sometimes I will go to one verse or one passage and I'll spend a day or a week. And I just pull it apart and really dive deep into all the meanings. And this is one of those where you could pull it all the way apart and really look at it in all these different ways. And suddenly, instead of having this one kind of interesting line, count it pure joy when you encounter various trials. Cool. Moving on. Or you could see it as a faceted diamond, and there's all these different ways to see it, and they're all such treasures. And that you can just settle into this one verse and all of the nuances from the original language that gives you different ways to look at it, different applications, different perspectives. And you could linger at one line in the Word of God for a week, even a month, because then you can stop and really examine your life and look at your life in light of this prism of this one line in the Word of God. Kind of pure joy, good times and bad, opportunities that demonstrate character. Good times are joyful times by their nature. You count it pure joy when you encounter great times. Like, well, that should be easy, right? So it says, oh, I was so happy. It's like, you were at Disneyland. It's easy to be happy at Disneyland. Good times are joyful times by their nature. When you have good times, joy is easy. Now, admittedly, some people are often joy killers. You can be having a good time and you still got a joy killing going on. Some people are joy killers for themselves and others. Even though you have to expend energy to kill it. If you just kind of get in the groove and go with the flow and just let it all happen, good times are good times. Joyful times are joyful times. But James admonishes us to have joy in bad times just as we do in good times. Now there's a reason for this, and that reason is this knowledge. Verse 3. Knowing this knowledge, knowing this, having this absolute certainty, because we know this is how this works, that the trying of your faith worketh patience, King James, or knowing that the testing of your faith produces endurance. So the trying, testing, dokomion, the proving, that by which something is tried, something is proved, a test. Patience or endurance, hypomone, steadfastness, constancy, there's that word again. Endurance, patience, sustaining, perseverance. And we could stop right there, just as much as we just did in the last verse. On to verse 4. But let patience, endurance, steadfastness, constancy, endurance, patience, sustaining, perseverance, but let patience have her perfect work, that you may be perfect and entire, wanting nothing, King James. And let endurance have its perfect result, that you may be perfect and complete, whole and complete, lacking in nothing. NASB. The perfect, teleos, finished, complete, perfect, mature. Oh, you could unpack that one for a while, couldn't you? Entire, complete, holokleros, to be complete, entire, to be whole, complete in all respects, free from sin, faultless, lacking in nothing, leaving behind nothing, forsaking nothing, inferior in nothing, failing nothing. Let endurance, let patience have its perfect result, that you may be perfect and complete, that you may be finished, that you may be mature, that you may be complete, entire, that you may be whole, that you may be faultless, that you may be lacking in nothing, that you may be leaving behind nothing, that you may be forsaking nothing, that you may be inferior in nothing, failing nothing. Well, that's pretty cool. Something tested is something proven. You know it's true, others see it's true. So how do you know if someone knows what they're doing? Well, you know when there's some kind of performance. How do we know our kids know their math? We give them a math test. If they show us that they know their math on their math tests, then it's proven that they know their math. If we give them a math test and they get 2 of the answers right, and the only 2 they got right was the addition questions, but they missed all the subtraction questions, all the multiplication and division questions, then we know, well, it seems like you know your addition, but you don't understand subtraction, multiplication, or division. Something tested is something proven. When something is put to the test, that's when you know. In martial arts, we do belt tests. That's your chance. You show up and you show me you know your stuff. And if you've demonstrated your fidelity to your own training, if you've been doing in our case, all we ask for is a minute a day. All I ask for is every single thing every single month. And if you're a color belt, that's really not that hard to do because you don't have that much material. When I ask that of my senior black belts, especially when I'm asking that of my senior Kempo belts, they've got 14 years of curriculum to try to get to every single month. That's going to take a while. That's a commitment. But when someone is a yellow belt in one style, you can do your every single thing every single month in 10 minutes, depending upon if you're doing karate. You can still do it in 20 minutes if you're doing weapons or jiu-jitsu. It's not that hard. It's just a matter of, did you decide to do it? And then we test them. Do you know your stuff? Can you show us you know your stuff? Something tested is something proven. You know it's true for yourself. I know what's true for me when something has been tested. It's easy for me to say what my virtues are if they've never been tested. It's easy for me to say what temptations, I would never succumb to that temptation. Like, well, have you ever really faced that temptation? When you really face the temptation, that's when you find out. And others see it's true. So imagine the power as between me and my lady when we both stuck to our signed agreement, because the signed agreement in the book was with each other, not with the leaders. That's what we were signing off on. And neither one of us liked it. Neither one of us wanted to do it. But we did it because we agreed to do it. I know it's true for me that I don't have to even like the thing to do what I said I was going to do. It doesn't have to have a cost low enough that I was willing to pay it for me to stick to my word. And my wife got to see that. She also found out for herself that even though she was ticked, she was much more upset about it than I was. But that she got to see for herself, I signed the thing. I do the thing because I signed the thing. I agree to it, I do it, period, done. And I got to see that in her. Do you think that allows me to trust her words a lot more? Absolutely. So what do you get when you squeeze an orange? Orange juice. Why? Because that's what's inside an orange. So when we go through various kinds of trials, we see where we succeed. If that's what's inside us. We see where we fail. If that's what's inside us. And we see the places where somewhere in between. In most of life, we're probably somewhere between success and failure. We're not always getting A. Now remember, in school, if you scored typically 90 to 100%, depending on your class, it might be a little more than 90%, but generally speaking, 9 out of 10 is an A. If you're doing better than 9 out of 10, you're getting an A. Some people get in so much trouble if they ever deviate from perfect. Where if they show up and they've got a 100-question test and they come home with a 98 and they had the best class anyone or best score anyone's gotten in that class for 2 years, and some people came home and their parents would go, well, what happened with those other 2? What's wrong with it? Didn't you study? And you go, I got an award for getting the best score in 2 years anyone's ever gotten. Yeah, but you missed those 2. What's wrong with you? Didn't you study that? I thought you were smart. Let me see which two you missed. Oh, you missed those? How stupid. And you come home celebrating an A+ success, best in 2 years, and all they can see is that you're an idiot because you weren't perfect. Some of us run life like that, where other people are in trouble with us because they weren't perfect. Or we are in trouble with ourselves because we weren't perfect. We're still getting a solid A, but we're still in trouble. Most of the time, though, we're not always going to be performing at an A. We're certainly not going to be performing perfect. We can try to show with an A+ game in a lot of classes. A+ might be that 98, 99, 100. You're playing your A game, you're still going to miss some. If you're doing something that's more like baseball, you can show up with your A+++ game, and if you have a 400 batting average, that is amazing. That means you still missed 6 out of 10 shots. If you're doing sales, some industries, your close rate, normal close rate might be 1 out of 8. And if you're closing 1 out of 4, that is stunning. But you still have to be ready to deal with the 3 out of 4 times you're not going to close, even if you're like the best of the best of the best. So most of the time, you're going to be somewhere between perfect and a complete failure. And you have to know where you are. And here gets to be the language challenge. So if you're doing a solid A performance and you regard yourself as a failure, so you're looking at like it's an F, you are disconnected from reality. You're trying to fix an F-level problem when it's an A-level situation. You don't fix A's like you fix F's. F's need a whole different kind of level of work. F's might need to change your major. I mean, that's what, if I'm majoring in criminal justice administration and I'm majoring in law because I'm in law school and I'm getting an F, I might need to quit law school and go do something else because I just might not be cut out for this law school thing. And if I'm looking at a B in a legal class as abject failure, so I'm going to quit law school because I'm just not cut out for this, that could be a problem. I won the American Jurisprudence Award in Remedies for the best score that teacher had seen in 2 years. That was pretty awesome. I also got a D in Civil Procedure. That wasn't so awesome. A D in Civil Procedure, if I was getting D's in law school, that'd be reason to drop out of law school. But I got the A in Remedies and the D in Civil, so okay, well, I'm not that good at Civil Procedure. But I'm good at Remedies. You let me get into a situation and help figure out different ways we can solve it, that I can do. If the whole thing is, did you cross all your T's and dot all your I's, not a natural at that, way not a natural at that. I know that I have D-level thinking in line with procedure, and so I always have to look things up and double-check things and then not be surprised when I'm told, oh, no, you need to do this different. But you got to know what the real deal is. You can't treat a solid A like it's an F. You can't treat a B like it's a failure. You got to treat it like what it is. Then there's the flip side. You can't treat D's and F's like as, well, it wasn't as perfect as I would like it to be. I wanted an A+, I got an A. Maybe an A-. Because an A or A- doesn't really need a lot of work. Might need a little bit of tinkering if you want to make it a little more secure. But if you're blowing it, but you're treating failing something as, yeah, it's as good as a B, I'm fine. You might not be fine, and someone else might pay the price for that. So when you squeeze an orange, you get orange juice because that's what's inside an orange. When you get squeezed, you find out what's inside of you. Success, failure, somewhere in between. And are you realistic about your self-assessment? Do you have enough self-awareness to know where you are? To know if it's an A, B, C, D, F. Do you know where you are? Because how you address a situation requires you know where you begin. Whether or not it even needs to be addressed depends upon where you begin. Are you a B student trying to nudge that up to an A? Or are you getting a D or an F and you need to not fail? When we go through various trials, when things are tested, when things are proven, one of the things that gets proven is we get to see if we rationalize. And that is to make sound rational. Do we make excuses? Excuses are permission. So I was recently in Nashville. If I didn't make it to class because my flights from Nashville got canceled, is that an excuse? Do I have permission to not be at a 3 o'clock class if that day's flights out of Nashville get canceled? Absolutely. You're stuck 1,500 miles away. Of course you have permission to not be here. You're 1,500 miles away. Now my flight went through LA. So if I get stuck in LA and I'm in Los Angeles at 8 in the morning, do I have permission in 7 hours to not make it from LAX to San Diego if all of the flights out of Los Angeles got canceled? Or do I have like half a dozen different ways to be here on time? I mean, really, anything faster than walking or riding a bike, I can be in San Diego in time to open up at 3:30 if I'm in LA at 10 a.m. If I land in LA and I already know when I land there are no flights leaving Los Angeles, I can be in San Diego in 6 hours. There's a whole bunch of ways I could do that. And if you find out that, yeah, there are buses available and trains available and car rentals available and 3 people offered me rides, it was, no, I'm waiting for my flight. Just tell them I couldn't make it. But you could have made it. So we see whether we rationalize. We see whether we make excuses. We see whether we justify as to make sound just, that what I did was right because. Well, unless your justification has to do with someone else didn't uphold their side of the contract. Like, I didn't pay them because they didn't finish the job. Okay, well, that's a good reason to pay. That actually is justified. But you didn't pay them because you didn't like their attitude when they did. Well, was their attitude part of the deal? Maybe pay them and don't hire them again. But unless the contract says attitude, you're not paying them for their attitude. You can decide if you're going to hire them again based upon their attitude, but you keep up your agreement. We can consider our values. We can consider our internal definitions, the choices that we made. We can make more of the same of certain choices if we liked the choices that we made. We can make less of other choices if we didn't like some choices that we made. And in some cases, to make entirely new choices where we say, okay, you know what I gave myself permission to do, the rationalizations I made, the justifications I made, that is not going to be acceptable to me. I'm going to make different choices, entirely new choices now. I owe some apologies. I need to do this different. The goal is to have proven true that which we wish to have true. It's to show that we really are who we want to believe we are. I am particularly blessed that so much of my character has been put to the test. I am particularly blessed that so much of my love has been put to the test. I am particularly blessed that so much of my joy has been put to the test. How joyful can I be in adverse circumstances? How joyful can I be when I take action based upon certain information I was given, which I was given because it was given to the person who gave it to me. So he's telling the truth, but unfortunately, someone else was lying. That happens. And then my joy gets put to the test. Am I still joyful in adversity? My peace gets put to the test. Do I have internal peace? A lack of conflict with myself. My peace with other people gets put to the test. A lack of being responsible for the conflict with somebody else. That I didn't pick this fight. Now, it doesn't mean there is no fight, because, I mean, even the Word of God says, insofar it depends upon you, be at peace with all men, because sometimes it doesn't depend on you. You can do your stuff, and you can be completely reasonable, and some people will still turn it into something. Then James 1:5. But if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God that giveth to all men liberally, and that upbraideth not, and it shall be given him. King James. Or, but if any of you lacks wisdom, let him ask of God, who gives to all generously and without reproach, and it will be given to him. 2 chapters later, we're told, but the wisdom that is from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, and easy to be entreated, full of mercy and good fruits, without partiality and without hypocrisy. You can kind of see in there, you can dig pretty deep in that too. We could do an entire series on just this passage at a verse a week, comfortably, and fill up 80 minutes at a time. James chapter 1, verse 6. Talking about asking for wisdom. But let him ask in faith, nothing wavering, for he that wavereth is like the wave of the sea, driven with the wind and tossed. For let not that man think he shall receive anything of the Lord. NASB version, but he must ask in faith without any doubting, for the one who doubts is like the surf of the sea, driven and tossed in the wind. For that man ought not to expect that he will receive anything from the Lord. James 1:8, a double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. NASB version, being a double-minded man, unstable in all his ways. Now you go, well, wait a second, we're talking about wisdom here. Wisdom is a blessing to be had for the asking. We're told that. But we're warned, especially with regard to wisdom, ask in faith without any doubting. If you do not ask in faith, if you doubt, then we ought not expect wisdom. Double-minded. So what is this double-minded? Well, double-minded has to do, among other things, with belief and counter-belief. Sometimes we want something, but we don't want something. Sometimes we have a process-result disconnect. So a belief and a counter-belief. A counter-belief is a belief in contradiction with the belief we believe that we're acting on. So if I say that I believe something is true, but then simultaneously I also kind of believe it's not true, somewhere in there I need to make some adjustments. To want to not want, this happens a lot. Sometimes it happens a lot in counseling. Someone could really, really say they want to be over a thing. They really do. But then they kind of don't. Because that's also a tremendous source of power for them. So I had one woman in particular. We were coming in on the big, scary, meaty thing in her life. And she had enough practice dealing with all the small stuff, building up to it. And we're coming down to that big thing that is going to allow her to live a fearless life. And what I mean by that is to only be afraid of the things to be afraid of, not to be afraid of everything. But to do that, she had to deal with this big, nasty, hairy, ugly thing about her dad. And with a tremendous amount of self-realization, she said, but then I'd be responsible. So here turned out to be her deal. One, she had always made her decisions out of fear. But she could always blame her father. It wasn't her fault that she was making all these decisions out of fear. That was her dad. And because it was her dad, not her, it wasn't her fault, it was her dad's fault, everyone else had to get in line with it. Her husband had to get in line with it. Her kids had to get in line. Her friends had to understand, had to deal with her childhood. And her universe had to bow before her trauma and serve her fear. Such that any time she had any desire to withdraw from something for any emotional reason, anytime anything got hard, she would retreat to this trauma, have all the emotion, and her whole universe would orbit around her on that. It was an incredible source of power for her, for which she took zero responsibility. It was never her responsibility. It was always her father's fault. And she realized, but if I deal with that, if I legitimately deal with that issue, I lose all that power. The people in orbit around me aren't going to bow down before fear if I don't have the fear. I'm not going to have the power through my emotion to get whatever I want by suddenly acting fearful. I'll actually have to make decisions. I'll actually have to have some persuasiveness, some leadership. I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of responsibility. She walked out of my office that day and never came back. I saw her again. She never wanted to deal with that. She wasn't willing to surrender having power that way. She was not willing to walk in power by wisdom because she understood how to wield power by fear. She understood how to wield power through her trauma. She didn't know what it would look like to wield power coming from a place of love, coming from a place of joy, coming from a place of peace. She didn't know how to exercise wisdom. She always used fear. And all my next step with her was going to be is like, well, then let's build up what that would look like so we know what you're stepping into, not just what you're going to lose. But she didn't want to do that. And think about how all of us have that. A belief and counter-belief, a want and a not want. Oh, part of it wanted to be free of fear. Part of it wanted to not live with feeling that anxiety, that fear, that trepidation all the time. But another part of her liked the power. Another part of her liked the perpetual permission. All she had to do was play that fear card and she could get out of anything. All she had to do was play that fear card and her husband would suddenly stop everything he was doing to cater to her fear. Her kids would stop whatever they were doing to cater to mom's fear. And to lose all that power was going to be too much for her. So double-minded, belief and counter-belief, want to not want. Process result disconnect. Why would someone be double-minded about wisdom? Answer, if verse 5 refers back to verse 2. Wisdom flows from a never-ending series of problems and challenges of ever-increasing difficulty and complexity for us to solve. I'm going to say that again, and we're going to keep moving forward. Wisdom flows from a never-ending series of problems and challenges of ever-increasing difficulty and complexity for us to solve. The difference between a problem and a challenge, a problem, if you do not solve it, you suffer a negative consequence. You know you have a problem if you must solve the problem or a bad thing happens. A challenge is if you do conquer the challenge, you gain a positive consequence. And something can be both a problem and a challenge. So like on a lot of tests in school, for a right answer, you get a point. For a wrong answer or no answer, you lose a point. And so if you try and you miss, it's the same as not trying. A lot of self-defense is like that too. If someone's trying to beat you up and you do something really, really, really stupid, you get beat up. If someone's trying to beat you up and you do absolutely nothing, you get beat up. May as well try, right? So something can be both a problem and a challenge. The problem is you must solve it or a bad thing happens. A challenge, if it's just a challenge but not a problem, nothing bad happens if you don't undertake a challenge. Everything just stays the way it is. But if you want to get something, you have to overcome that challenge. So that's what a challenge is. Wisdom is a valuable virtue. Proverbs and Ecclesiastes extol wisdom as a virtue. and personify wisdom. Solomon was praised by God for asking for wisdom. James chapter 3 describes the wisdom from above. God offers it to us for the asking. God offers it to us for the asking. But we must be willing to go through the process to get to the result of wisdom. We must be willing to accept a never-ending series of problems and challenges, of ever-increasing difficulty. That means it gets harder and harder, and complexity. That means there's a lot of moving parts for us to solve. I think wisdom is worth it. Some key advice, though: solve all your problems. If you have stuff that if you don't get it done, you don't get it right, bad stuff happens, solve those. Negative is 4 times more powerful than positive. And so if you let the negative go, the negative does more damage than the good stuff can compensate for. At least it's hard to. And so if I have like a mix of good behaviors and bad behaviors, sometimes I'm a good friend and sometimes I'm a bad friend, sometimes I'm a good instructor, sometimes I'm a bad instructor, sometimes I'm a good martial artist, sometimes I'm a bad martial artist. The good has to outweigh the bad 4 to 1 just for me to stay even. Just to hold my ground. 4 to 1 just to hold my ground. What if I can just eliminate 1 on the negative? That is just as powerful as adding 4 to the positive. So solving one problem, eliminating one problem is as good as 4 successes at the same level. Overcoming 4 challenges at the same level. That's why I like structural solutions. That's why I like building in redundant structural solutions. An example, since we have our service dog here, is just having extra dog food around. Because what's a problem sometimes? Sometimes you forgot to bring the food for the dog. Is that a problem? If you're the dog, that's a big problem. So where's my lunch? But if you have extra food in places that you are, if there's extra food here, there's extra food in the vehicle, there's extra food, so whenever you go places, you have it. That is a structural solution. You have now solved a problem. And that solving a problem is as good as 4 successful overcoming challenges. Solve all your problems. Don't set yourself up to have problems you don't need to have. Okay, because what if, they had an opportunity to have spare food? Because if I don't allow them to have spare food here, nothing they can do about that. But if I do, and they have containers and they have the food, but they declined to pre-solve that problem, then that means they decided days, weeks, even months beforehand to have the problem. Because they know sooner or later the problem's going to come up, because none of us have a perfect memory, and sometimes we get distracted, and very often, anytime something is out of pattern, you forget. And all it takes is you're on your way to get the food and something distracts you. It could be as simple as someone asks you a question, or you get a notification on your phone that there's a text or a message, and your brain lost track of where it was and doesn't get to the thing. Or anytime you have anything that's out of your pattern, it disrupts your whole pattern. And then you don't even know you forgot food until it's time to feed the dog, and poof, there's no food. Pre-solve your problems. Solve your problems. Definition of a problem is something with a solution. So solve all your problems. Seek wise challenges. And note with your problems, your problem is where your solution is. Now I'm going to put some emphases on here, and I'm going to say this a few different ways. Your problem is where your solution is. Someone else's problem is where someone else's solution is. Our problem, meaning an us problem, is where our solution is. So if we jointly, us, have a problem, the us problem is where the us solution is. Here's an ideal. When there's an us problem, collaborative solutions where both of us take responsibility and either of us is the solution. Common example I use here, I'll use Andrea, because we were doing an event one time with the kids, and we were going to need a kid DVD, Ninja Turtles for the kids. And she had the DVD. So now, the us problem is she wants to get the DVD here. I need the DVD here. Now, I could make it her problem. Well, bring me the DVD. She could make it her problem. I will bring you the DVD. Now, that then makes it her problem. But who needs the DVD? I need the DVD. Now, she wants it to be here because, she's going to be part of the event too. But I need her to take a certain action. Well, if I want her to take a certain action, do I make her responsible for that all by herself, or do we collaborate? Well, of course, what is it? Is this a her problem or an us problem? It's an us problem. So we did a very simple us solution, where she said she would bring it. I said that I would text her a reminder. And then I texted her a reminder. She texted me back to let me know it was with her bag that was coming with her when she came. So she's at home. I know the DVD's in her bag. I also know that bag comes with her every time she comes here. And as part of the us solution, we needed it probably for a Saturday. And that she was going to bring it on Wednesday. Well, why is she going to bring it on Wednesday? We don't need it until Saturday. Because what can happen, if she does an A-level performance, she succeeds 9 out of 10 times, she nails it. That means it's 1 out of 10 times, it's not going to make it on Wednesday. So we build in the A-level performance. What if she has B-level performance? One out of 5 times she forgets, doesn't make it. Then we build in B-level performance. Because then if it doesn't make it here on Wednesday, we can try again on Friday. If it doesn't make it here on Friday, we can try again on Saturday. Now, if she has A-level performance 9 out of 10 times she gets it, an A performer is still going to miss it on Wednesday, maybe 1 out of 10 times. That's okay, we'll try again on Friday. And we'll do the same process, very collaborative. I take 100% responsibility for my side. She takes 100% responsibility for your side. We just need one of us to perform for the answer to happen. And so when we do that, what are the chances a 9 out of 10 performer is going to miss twice in a row? 1 in 100. Well, what does that mean? But 1 out of 100 times I still don't have the DVD here on Friday. But that's okay because we have Saturday still. If she does an A-level performance, 9 out of 10 times she succeeds, what are the odds she's going to miss Wednesday and Friday and Saturday? 1 in 1,000 times. I could live with that. An A-level performer is going to blow it 3 times in a row on the same thing, maybe 1 in 1,000 times. Maybe much, much more than that. Because if they're a solid A performer 95% of the time, that means 1 out of 20 times they're still going to blow it. A solid A performer is still going to blow it 1 out of 20 times. So what are the odds a solid A performer is going to blow it on Wednesday? 1 in 20. What's the chance she's going to blow it on Friday and Wednesday? 1 in 400. What are the odds she's going to blow it on Wednesday and Friday and Saturday if we are doing this collaborative 90% solution or 95% solution now? 1 in 8,000. We can live with that. Because it's an us problem. Us problems have us solutions. I don't make an us problem your obligation to solve because it's our problem. So Romans 8:37b, we are more than conquerors through him who loved us. We're not just problem solvers, we're conquerors. We overcome challenges. We are more than conquerors through him who loved us.